No, that's the wrong one.
Share screen.
All right, mute that again.
And just about here. Okay, that's up beside it. All right, we should be ready.
Good morning. Call to order the Land Use and Information Committee meeting for April 6, 2021.
That's up beside it.
Notice has been posted in accordance with Wisconsin statute 19.84, open meeting law. Good morning. Call to order the Land Use and Information Committee meeting for April 6, 2021. That's up beside it. Notice has been posted in accordance with Wisconsin statute 19.84, open meeting law.
You don't have to listen to the meeting twice. It's the replay.
Yeah, I think you should be all right.
Okay, try again.
Oh, you have to unmute.
Try to do the star step. I did.
Didn't you?
No. But this one's not on.
I have to start over?
Yep.
Too late?
Better. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, good morning. I'll call to order the Land Use and Information Committee meeting for April 6, 2021. Notice has been posted in accordance with Wisconsin statute 19.84, open meeting law. First on the agenda, we have general public comments. First on the agenda is Don Hamilton. Are you on, Don?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning, Don Hamilton. I live at 7158 South Devil's Lake. I'd like to thank the committee for their service to the people of Burnett County. Your commitment to balancing land uses that comply with Chapter 30 and the comprehensive land use plans of the county, villages, and towns is noteworthy and appreciated. From the Burnett County Comprehensive Land Use Plan, in Chapter 7, it states one of the ongoing land use challenges in any relationship between the county and towns, with regard to land use decision making. To do that, a multi-jurisdictional process to gather feedback on land uses was written into the plan. Our Burnett County plan places a high priority on and advocates for a land use decision making process that encourages cooperation between the county and the villages and towns. Your willingness to hear from the villages is not only positive, it's a great example of why the comprehensive plan intended to share the responsibility for discretionary land use decision making between the county and the towns or village. Recently, your leadership was on full display when you considered and evaluated the compatibility of the land use goals of the county and the town of Swiss Comprehensive Land Use Plan to reach your decision. Your willingness to listen and evaluate multiple comprehensive land use plan goals and policies against the approval criteria in Chapter 30 promotes consistency and minimizes land use conflicts in the towns. Your actions demonstrate the high value and merit you place on feedback, and that leads to more communication, and it is this type of communication that improves the intergovernmental relations between the villages, towns, and your committee. I think we can all agree this is a good thing. Today, I look forward to the cooperative land use planning effort continue. I look forward to the public being able to hear the letters from Webster and Meenan about how a proposed conditional use is or is not compatible or meets or does not meet the land use goals and desires of their municipality. Thank you in advance for recognizing how important it is for all of us to hear and understand how a proposed conditional use will impact these communities. Thank you for your time and thank you for your service today.
Thank you, Don. Next is Patrick Hansen on.
I am on. I was not planning to speak until the CUP hearing for CUP 21-09.
Okay, I had you down for general comments too, but that's okay. We'll catch you on that one.
Yeah, spare you guys the time.
Thank you. That is all of the general public comments we have at this time. Is there a motion to approve the agenda order?
Move to approve the agenda order.
Motion by Supervisor is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Pearson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of the minutes from the March 2nd, 2021 meeting.
Motion to approve the minute.
Motion by Brent. Second by Mr. Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go into the public hearing. If Jason can read the public hearing notice.
Notice of public hearing, State of Wisconsin, County of Burnett, Tuesday, April 6, 2021 at 9 a.m. at the Burnett County Government Center, room 165, Town of Meehan, Severn, Wisconsin, regarding the following. Map amendment, MAP 2105 Hotchkiss, to rezone the northeast quarter, the southeast quarter located in section 15, Town 38 North, Range 14 West, Town of Dewey, from A, exclusive ag to A2, ag residential zoning district. Zoning change requested by Megan Hotchkiss. Details of the proposed revisions are available at the Burnett County Land Services Department, Burnett County Clerk's Office, and on the Burnett County website. Map amendment, MAP 2106 Erickson, that one has been taken off the agenda by a request from the applicant, so I won't read that one. We'll do that one at a future month. Map amendment, MAP 2107 Johnson Enterprises Partnership, to rezone the northeast quarter, the southeast quarter located in section 12, Town 41 North, Range 16 West, Town of Swiss, from A, exclusive ag to RR3 residential recreation zoning district. Zoning change requested by Greg Johnson. Details of proposed revisions are available at the Burnett County Land Service Department, Burnett County Clerk's Office, and on the Burnett County website. Conditional use permit, CUP 2105 Cernick, public notice hereby given to all persons in the County Union, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Scott Cernick has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to allow a camper year-round for up to 3 years located at 27954 County Road FF in the R1 zoning district, Lot 1, CSM, Volume 26, page 281, and Government Law 1, Section 26, Town 40 North, Range 17 West. Conditional use permit CUP 2106 Newburgh. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Swiss, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Michael and Heidi Newburgh have made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to allow a camper year-round for up to 3 years located at 31207 Staples Lake Road in the RR3 zoning district, Lot 2, CSM, Volume 27, page 132. In the southeast quarter, section 7, Town 41 North, Range 15 West. Conditional use at CUP 2109 Chelmo. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Meehan, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Daniel Chelmo has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to construct a 90-unit campground located at 27060 State Road 35. In the A2 zoning district, in the southeast quarter, the northwest quarter, and the southwest quarter, the northwest quarter. Section 4, Town 39 North, Range 16 West.
Thank you, Jason. First on the agenda for public hearings is rezone request map 21-05 Hotchkiss. Megan, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Would you please explain your application?
So the application was submitted. My father passed away in December of 2020, and he had left the land to me and my sisters and had divided the property. The front parcel will be divided into a 30-acre parcel, which will be put into the names of Kim and Christy, and my 10 acres will go into my name. Both parcels have separate residences on them. The house at 23705, my mother will have lifelong use of until she passes. And I plan on living and staying at the resident 23761 Poquet Lake Road. The property is currently being rented to Steve Dahlstrom for agricultural use, which will continue for the next 5 years at minimum.
Are there any questions from the committee for Megan before I open the public hearing portion? If not, I'll open the public hearing at this time. And I don't believe we have any comments from the public on this application. So I will close the public hearing. Mr. Allen, do we have any considerations to make on this rezone?
Well, you've got correspondence you've got from the town of Dewey. They sent an email saying that they were in favor of the request. And then there's a staff report. There was a few minor issues that we found out there. Megan sent me an email about getting some of these items resolved. But yeah, other than that, nothing else.
Okay. And the items is the sanitary permits for both of them. And I'd put a lock and chain. She was going to do that.
Yes.
She explains that the PVC pipe to the ditch is hooked up to their sump pump, so it isn't gray water. And then they're supposed to follow all local, county, and state and federal requirements for this activity. Any other questions or comments from the committee? If not, is there a motion?
I just would add to the
Mr. Conroy, go ahead.
Sorry, I should have introduced myself. Supervisor Conroy. The change from A to A2 is consistent, I believe, with the town plan and the comprehensive plan, as we've been tracking those things quite closely. So I see no issue at all with this, and would move to approve this rezoning request.
Okay, motion to approve the zoning request. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. And this would be just a recommendation to the county board to approve the zoning.
Correct.
Correct.
So I think some of the issues that were raised were already addressed, correct, Jason?
Yeah. Have been, yeah. Okay, have roll call vote. Mr. Pearson.
Question.
Oh, question?
I was just wondering, are the staff recommendations going to be part of the motion? Or since this is a rezone, is that not going to be really part of it? Or what's the status?
Supervisor Conrad, I should have mentioned, I was attempting to address that with my question, that the lock and chain aspect is, I think, understood, but it doesn't account for the need to service one private sewer system. I would add that. I think we've clarified that number 3, the PVC pipe is not a violation because it's a clear water discharge. And so we proceed with number 1 and number 4 of the staff recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Conroy to approve of the staff recommendations of 1 and 4. Mr. Patton, you second that motion? Second by Mr. Patton. We'll have a roll call vote here. Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford? Yes. So this will be sent to county board for their approval for zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you.
You'll be notified once the county board approves.
Yep.
Next, we have a rezone request from Johnson, 2107, the rezone from A to R3. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Krause, are you on to explain this?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, Greg.
I'm here to speak.
Go ahead.
This is Mark Krause from Wagner Surveying, speaking for Greg Johnson in behalf of a request for a rezone. This property has got several rows of trees in it. It was agricultural land, has not been farmed for several years. The adjoining lands are R2 to the north and to the west, and R3 to the southwest. The proposed road, I believe you have a copy of the drawing showing what we're proposing. The road would come up off of Bass Lake Road, a 66-foot road on the easterly side, all the way up 3/8 of a mile to the middle of these lots, and then go westerly to service the 8 nominal 5-acre parcels there. And we went to the township for review, and they approved it. The only condition, I believe, on that was they did not want to see any campers on those sites. It needed to be permanent homes, and that was acceptable by the applicant. And I'd be willing to answer any of the questions that you may have.
Okay, heard the application. Any comments or questions from the committee members? Mr. Ah.
So it's the parcel that's hashed out on page, on the map that we have. Is that it? That's the parcel?
The one with our tax out in red?
Yeah.
Yes.
My question is, how is it going to be accessed?
From Bass Lake Road to the south.
To be putting in a road from
That road
the south.
so it'll be a quarter mile from the south, go to the north, from Bass Lake Road.
And they own that property?
They own that parcel to the south. Yep.
The next one over, Chuck, shows the lot, and then it shows the proposed road coming up.
Mr. Johnson did approach the property owners to the west, and they were not interested in selling this time for having a more direct access out to Highway 35.
Supervisor Conroy. Clark, I have a question. Considering the town of Swift's comprehensive plan and the ag district and the ag enterprise zone aspect, did Greg consider going to A2 instead? Because I think it would be hard to go to RR3 and remain consistent with the comprehensive plan. Now, that could be done if the town would amend its plan to reflect a change to a smaller lot, non-ag use in that part of the town. But looking at the comprehensive plan, it provides for if the town wants to do that and amend its plan, then the county cannot find that amended plan to be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. But right now, I think RR3 would be inconsistent with the comp plan. And under 66.1001 of the stats, we are required to be consistent with the plan on a zoning change. Can you talk about that?
We talked to the town about it. They had no problem with it. As you can see, there are several rows of trees there. It was wooded land. This was really never exclusively ag from the get-go. Although it was shown as that way and it was zoned as that way, I'm guessing it was for tax purposes. And as you can see, it is R3 immediately north and immediately west of the property, so it was not really inconsistent with the rest of the use in that area.
No, I don't disagree with it at all. I'd be all for it if the town had amended its plan. But my point is that we're going to stick to the rules as they exist. We have a conflict with the comprehensive plan, in my opinion. But I'd be all for recommending A2. That's my point.
This is Jason speaking real quick. I will point out that in their comp plan, it does say for A, this does not include the development of these lands for residential use or parceling of land for subdivision.
Exactly.
So it does have a little bit of a caveat in there to say that it's got a little bit of flex.
Again, I just want us to be sure that we consider it carefully.
Any other questions or comments from the committee or Mr. Towns? Question I have, Jason, is they've divided off into 8 lots there, and they're less than 10 acres. Is this consistent with subdivision plans or not?
There's a subdivision ordinance?
Well, no, for the town, does the town have a thing, it's supposed to be 10 acres or not?
No, I don't think Swiss does.
I thought they did, okay.
They went to the town of Swiss, and the town of Swiss says they're for the request, so I'm hoping it meets any subdivision ordinance that they have in place.
We spoke to the town of Swiss, and we have to go back to their next month's meeting with the actual plan once the zoning is approved. So we did have the map in front of them, and will need to get a subdivision permit from them also before we can continue.
Okay. Mr. Rob?
A question on here, from the town of Swiss, they put the condition in there that they don't want future use of the property to be for non-permanent structures, like campgrounds. Can we put conditions like that in a rezone?
Why should you looking at me?
Yeah.
I think you could, but I mean, without it being,
It's not a conditional use, it's just
oh,
a rezone, so we're just changing zoning. Seems like it would fall under all of the rules for that zone.
I think what I would think would be the best route is if that's truly what the town of Swiss wants, when Mark goes back to them with a final map to get final approval, that the town should make that, require that to be a covenant or something of that approval and have that recorded. So, yeah, I don't feel that it's the county's responsibility to be enforcing. That's basically a private covenant of sorts.
Supervisor Carney, I agree with you on that. It's, because some rezonings are frowned upon from a legal point of view. Really difficult to enforce.
Mr. Anderson?
Just one question, and we've seen it a lot and have some of these coming up, where they can put a camper on for 3 years while they're building their structure. Now, the town of Swiss says no temporary structures. So would that preclude them doing that while they build their house?
If that's what the town wants, but I don't think that would be a condition that the county would enforce. The town could enforce that.
Well, if it's within 1,000 feet, they'd have to.
If it's within 1,000 feet, they'd have to come and get a conditional use permit, but I don't believe it's within 1,000 feet of any water.
No, I don't think so either.
Not that far.
So we don't regulate campers in that location.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? And we don't have any, we do not have any comments from the public, so I'll open the public hearing portion. Since we did not have any comments, I will close the public hearing on this conditional use on the map of 2107 rezone. Do we have a motion? This would be a motion to take to the county board.
I move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Ah.
To recommend to the board.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Anderson.
Staff recommendations, does that apply or not?
The only comments that the staff made was no direct access allowed on State Highway 35 unless approved by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. And that's to follow all local and county and state regulations. The number one, for no direct access, that would have to be approved by DOT, right, Jason?
Correct.
And I don't believe it will. So we have a motion and a second to take it to county board for approval. Mr. Pearson? Yes. Mr. Madden?
Yes.
Mr. Baumberg?
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lau?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford? Yes. It has been approved and it will be taken to the county board Will it be this month yet, Jason?
Correct. That's
Will it be this month? Okay. Next, next we have conditional use permit CUP 2105, Cernick, camper for 3 years. Are you on, Mr. Cernick?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Go ahead and explain your application.
Well, our request would be to leave our camper unit on for another 3 years to reevaluate our plan for building after that time.
Are there any questions, comments from the committee before I open the public hearing? Go ahead, Mr. Ron.
I just have a question about what's going on there? What is your plan? There's like that house, and then you've got the camper unit there, or a park model?
We don't have a house. That would be the south neighbor. All we have on ours is our camper unit.
Okay, so that doesn't, okay.
Yeah, the cabin to the south is not ours. That's a different lot.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for the committee? So, Mr. Bickford, I have one question. In the 3 years, you plan on building any place there?
Well, our long term eventually is to build something, yes, but right now we're still clearing and trying to do a lot of it ourselves here to get the lot buildable, moving some trees and doing some landscape, etc. And that.
Because when we approve
Go
a use permit for 3 years, it means it's for each 3 years, and it is not guaranteed that it would be extended past that 3-year period.
Correct.
Mr. Rob.
I go back to the kind of the plat map that we have here, and it shows that the house overlaps both properties.
I'll explain real quick. So that used to be one parcel that had an older house up by the road. Then the parcel got split into two. That old house got taken down. So there's a new house on the southerly lot, and then he has a camper on this northerly lot.
Okay. Does he have septic?
Yeah, both lots have septic.
The supervisor commented that their photo, the satellite imagery, is more recent than the CSX.
The aerial shows it.
Jason, on the septic from the park model to the septic, is that hard, or is that just a regular pipe that people use for?
Well, they have it piped all the way up from the drain field up to the camper. It's all sewer pipe.
Okay. But I mean, right from the camper to the pipe there, that's just regular camper hose?
I believe.
No, it's a PVC.
Oh.
It's PVC pipe, hard pipe.
Okay. I'm mixing up with one and the other. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the committee? I'll open the public hearing, and we have not received any requests for public comments, so I'll close the public hearing. At this time, is there a motion on CUP 2105, Cernick for camper for 3 years?
Make a motion to approve this CUP.
Motion by Mr. Patton.
With the conditions?
With the
Staff recommendations.
recommendations. Okay, I'll read them. Staff recommendations are only one camper allowed on the parcel. Sanitary system be serviced, maintained, and report filed with the county by June 1st, 2021. Follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for the activity. This is included in your motion, correct? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Anderson. Roll call vote. Mr. Pearson?
Yep.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Rob?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. You will be notified by Mr. Towns of that the permit has been approved for the 3-year period. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a conditional use permit, CUP 2106, Newbert, camper for 3 years. Are you on, Mr. Newbert?
I am indeed.
Go ahead and explain your application.
All right. Hey, guys, thanks for the time today. It's been a crazy ride over the last 10 months as we've worked to educate ourselves on how to do all this correctly. It's been a pleasure to work with Jason and the DNR and other contacts at the county. But we are, we're a single family. We're absolutely not a campground looking to conflict with anything that's going on recently. We've got the infrastructure in place and the code, septic's in, well, electric. Have to expand the driveway a little bit to make that compliant for emergency vehicles. Well aware of that. And our plan is we're establishing our home site for the future here. So unfortunately, don't have as much money as I need to build the place that I want to build, but we're going to get the infrastructure all there and set up, and we're going to continue to clean up some rubbish from past owners that are on the property and follow all the rules and be a good and respectful neighbor. That's our goal. So appreciate your consideration today, and I'll answer any other questions you have.
Thank you. Any comments or questions by the committee members? This one may have been one I noticed that it was the hose from camper to the septic system. If there are no questions or comments in the committee, I'll open the public hearing. We have no public that is wishing to make comments, so I'll close the public hearing. If you wish to make a motion to approve or disapprove CUP 2106 Newbert camper for 3 years with the conditions of only one camper allowed on the parcel, driveway to meet width requirements by 6/1/2021, and follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for the activity.
I'll move to approve this CUP.
Motion by Mr. Pearson to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Conroy. I second, and then to add the staff recommendations.
Motion and second to approve with the staff recommendations of 3. Roll call, Mr. Pearson.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Robb.
Yes.
Mr. Conroy.
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. The conditional use permit CUP 2106 has been approved for 3 years, and as I explained before, this permit is only good for 3 years. It's not guaranteed that it would be extended after that 3-year period. So,
Yes, sir.
you'll be notified by Mr. Towns. Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have conditional use permit CUP 21-09 Chelmo, 90-unit campground. Mr. Chelmo, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead and explain your application.
I have a general comment first, and then I left Jason with some visuals, and we'll take a look at a couple of those, and then I'm available to answer questions. My opening statement is, Dear Burnett County Land Use and Information Committee, as the applicant of CUP 2109 before the committee, I hereby state my objection to the hearsay nature of the written comments being submitted to the committee in advance of its consideration of my permits. No foundation is being stated or presented relevant to such comments. No explanation of credentials or professional attainment is being stated as a basis for any expertise behind such comments. These comments seem to be merely personal preferences and opinions in support of conclusory opposition to any permits. As such, these comments are not reasonably applicable to the permit application. Creating a voluminous amount of such comments does not change anything else about them, nor does it cancel my legal property rights. My applications are complete, and I look forward to your hearing where we can discuss relevant issues while under fair treatment of the law. I will also state that I have the same objections for any such comments relayed orally at the hearing as well. Thank you sincerely, Daniel Chelmo.
Mr. Chelmo, Mr. Chairman, I'll remind you that this is for a public hearing, and public can give their comments whether it be substantial or not. So go ahead.
I understand.
I'll hold with the application.
Jason, do you have the flash drive with some overheads for me?
Yes, you just have to tell me which items you want.
Okay, let's go to Wild Rose, Yellow River plan maps. Plan details.
Plan details.
And under that is Yellow River zoning map.
Just give me 1 second here.
Sure.
Get it up.
Yellow River zoning map. And this identifies the various zones around the Chelmo farm, and the Yellow River site is outlined. Let me know when you have that up. Have you found that on the flash drive?
Yep, I'm just getting to share my screen.
Okay.
Real quick.
Okay.
Too many windows open. All right, I have that up on the screen.
The dark line outlines the Chelmo farm, including an area located in the village of Webster and north of Yellow River. And the Yellow River site is outlined. And the point of this this slide is to show that between the Yellow River site and the village of Webster residential area, that we own 15 acres, which serves as a buffer between the Yellow River site and the existing residences within the village of Webster. And that, then I'd like to go to another slide, if you could back up one, and show distance to residence.
Screen space.
Are you able to find that, Jason?
Yep. Up here in 1 second. All right, I have that one up now.
Okay, the green line left to right is the village of what's your boundary with the town of Meenan. Keep in mind that the land north of Yellow River on this aerial photo is owned by Daniel Chelmo. This is the address of the various residences south of Yellow River and the distance to the nearest proposed RV site. It ranges 565 to the Yellow River Saloon, 515 to the next property, 460, 470, 385, and then 750. And we show this because these are all significant distances. Now, in some of the communication that perhaps you forwarded, Jason, to the board, this is all woodland north of the river and some woodland south. So these distances are not across open land. They are through woods. And there's somewhere around 7,000 trees in that woods between the proposed site and these existing residences. And I'm sorry if someone has a question, be happy to do that now. The next site, the next visual I'd like to look at is, Jason, if you could back up to the Chelmo design team.
Okay, which slide or which item you want?
Well, I'm just going to read through these and point out a couple. The first is a record of my experience. I was a district conservationist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture for 16 years in Washoe County, Wisconsin. And included in my work was all federal farm conservation activities, including construction of conservation practices and inventory of farm resources. And in the last 8 years, I administered the 1985 Farm Bill, which included all of the wetland provisions of the Farm Bill, which was cross-compliance for farmers who were participating in USDA farm government programs requiring those farmers to comply with wetland regulations. The next name, item 2, don't open it. We'll just go through these briefly. Lee Cheroni is my attorney. Item 3 is my engineer. Brian Bach is an environmental engineer out of Duluth. Item 4, I'd like you to open up item 4. Item 4 is Heidi Brigman. She works for HSB Engineering Company out of Duluth, Minnesota. She is the senior design specialist, landscape architect and planning group, specializes in site master planning. And I'm not going to read through her credentials, but as you page down, you will see that she has impressive credentials. And those credentials are for complying with environmental and county and state environmental regulations. In other words, the design work that she does is consistent with those county, state, and federal guidelines. If you could back out now to the list of the design team, Douglas Crane is my surveyor. That's item 5. You don't need to open that. But item 6, I want you to open item 6, Ecosystems, Tim King. Are you with me, Jason?
Yep, I have it open.
Tim King is a professional wetland scientist. He is, so if you page down to the second page, Tim is a certified professional wetland scientist, Wisconsin DNR professional wetland delineator. Now, a wetland delineator develops wetland maps of all the wetland types, prepares a document, and submits that in final form to the Department of Natural Resources. Now, Tim prepared a wetland inventory of this parcel at Yellow River at 27060 State Road 35. That document is 88 pages. It becomes an official record of the wetlands on the Chelmo farm at that address. Not only is Tim a delineator, but he also reviews the wetland maps of others. In other words, he came off a short list on the DNR website that identifies those people who are so credentialed and so skilled that they review the maps of others. I'd like you to back out of that. We can go through his long list of credentials, but let's back out of that and go to item 8. Item 8 is the wetland map that Tim King developed for my property, this campground site at Yellow River. And you can see there's several different wetland types beginning at the river in the south. This is a very unique property to have such a variety, not only of wetlands, but of upland types and cover vegetation as well. Tim is a DNR accredited specialist, and he's on my team to provide oversight on ways to implement this campground plan without impacting wetlands. On the other hand, this is also a unique opportunity to provide my registered guests with a unique understanding of these many wetland types. And that's going to be the focus of this campground. Any questions on that map or anything so far? If not, I'd like to back out of that and go back to plan details. And that's going to be the area location. Are you with me, Jason?
Yes, I have that up.
The Chelmo River Campground aerial photo?
Correct.
That shows the dark line is the boundary of the most intensive development of the campground. And it shows the vegetative types. About 70% of the campground is first growth white pine, volunteer white pine, and those pine are 30 years old. And then scattered on the east and the west are some intermingled hardwoods. The point of this is that the vegetative cover consists of about 500 trees per acre. Our plan goal is to have 50 trees per acre per campsite. Now, this open-grown white pine needs to be thin, but the plan is to use a D plus 12 spacing, select the trees to save. And my point is, this is the kind of environment that campers like, and it provides screen and buffer and noise and light reduction to not only the campers with each other as well as the neighboring properties. if we would go back to the April Yellow River County hearing, I want to look at development costs.
Okay, I have development costs open.
This is an estimate of the cost of development. The average cost of development campgrounds in the state of Wisconsin is $10,000 per site. This is a capital investment of electric, development costs, roads, permits, site work, septic, service buildings, swimming pool, technology, visitor center, waterfront, and water service. And then below that, we have a list of operating costs. And we've heard that the campgrounds don't pay their own way. Well, they may not pay all of their own way. However, when this campground is installed, the average increase in assessed value is 1,000%. And I've looked around at the neighboring campgrounds, and that's what it is. The current assessed value is about $700 an acre for this Chelmo property, and that will increase to $7,000 an acre after these improvements are made, and that reflects in the property tax. Now, in addition to that, sewer, water, electric, solid waste, and recycling are fee-based. In other words, those are paid out of the operation of the campground. I have some others here, but if there's, unless there's some specific question, I guess we could look at the waterfront. Let's look at the waterfront, Jason. That would be under plan details, and that would be waterfront detail. Can you kind of follow me there?
Yes, I have that one open.
Yeah, Chelmo Yellow River Campground waterfront details. The green line again, that goes from left to right. Boundary to the north is in the town of Meenan, and the boundary to the south is the village of Webster, but note that Chelmo has two parcels in the village of Webster that are part of this 15 acres of buffer or woodland between the site and the other. We own 1 mile of frontage on Yellow River. Some places on both sides of the river. And this plan is asking for about 80 feet of access for registered guests. No vehicles, no boats, no carrying boats. We're looking at on the west side a walking trail to an observation deck with a railing. In the center is a stairway to a fishing pier, and to the east is a walking path to an observation deck with a railing. Total impact of 80 feet. You also notice that there is a day park area, so that there's a natural area there for a picnic area, whatever, observation area. The main center, the main value of the river to this campground is to look at it. Not to interfere with it, not to swim. There's no swimming, there's no boating from this campground. The serenity of the flow of water is a great healer. Unless there's some other questions, that concludes this part that I have. And Mr. Chairman, I also some questions that I can answer now. Perhaps there'll be some things at the end of these other comments, and I would ask for an opportunity to answer questions or comment on those.
Any questions or comments on the committee? Mr. Conroy.
Supervisor Conroy, is this information we've just been provided, we've received today?
Correct.
Okay. Based on Kramer and Sons, Wisconsin Supreme Court case law 1994, should have been in here at the time of the first notice of publication for the hearing. And my point is just that if the playing field is not level when the applicant can add a bunch of information at the last minute, so that's going to compel us to not make a decision today, in my opinion, because the opposition has not had an opportunity to look at this. So this, just so you know, Mr. Chelmo, that this precludes us from voting on this, in my opinion. We can postpone, I should say, but I don't think we could make a motion to approve. Or probably deny, based on the 11th hour receipt of the information.
Mr. Rob.
Well, I guess in reference to Supervisor Conroy's comments, I'm not sure how much new was added today. I think it was a clarification of information that we already had, that there wasn't anything new that was added. I mean, we do have the maps of the campgrounds and all of this stuff, so I
understand, but I'm just saying that the case law is pretty clear that you should have everything in the packet that the public wants to see at the point of first publication. Okay, and so it's just what you're going to see. I'm just concerned about it.
I would agree. I would agree that we have an issue if there was new information being added, if there was suddenly something that no one had seen before that was new and otherwise I don't think anything very substantial is.
I'm raising it as a point of caution because these issues have become so litigious, controversial. I don't want us to blunder into something that's going to cause us problems on the road.
If I may comment, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
My site map is extremely detailed, and I'm sure you gathered that in going through it. The presentation that I made briefly with these slides is to separate items to make them more clear. I could have gone through my site map in some detail, but it is extremely detailed. And so I appreciate the opportunity to clarify those. And the thing I wanted to communicate to you today is my passion. This Jason's staff report said this was in the family since 1967. Actually, no. Actually, this is my grandfather's brother-in-law's property from the late 1930s. I grew up on this property, and it's been in the family a long time. And thank you for allowing me to explain my passion for what I consider the best use for this property. Thank you.
Mr. Pearson.
I've got a concern that, we've got an objection from the village of Webster. Under Wisconsin state law, villages are granted extraterritorial authority in a strip about a mile wide all the way around the village, and that's, to save them from any problems in the future for expansion or sewer and water issues or whatever it may be. And I would feel uncomfortable not having some acceptance from the village on this project because of its proximity to the village before we could proceed to give a viable answer on the county level.
In response to that, I did meet with the village about 2.5 years ago. I did discuss with them possibility of extraterritorial. They weren't interested in pursuing it, but they've been aware of this for 2.5 years, and so it's not a surprise to them.
It's not a surprise, but I mean, they still have some, some legal rights. I mean, they don't have to have an extraterritorial committee. I mean, their rights exist without that. The only reason you have a committee is to moderate any conflict that might be in that district, so it's, so each side understands what's going on. And, not doing that, I'm still concerned they've got the right, to enact extraterritorial authority on this, which could negate all the effort that we put forth. And obviously, there's some concern on the village side that we did receive a letter and was, pretty extensive in their concern about this. And again, I think your presentation was very commendable. We certainly don't have any problem with that, but it's an issue that we don't often run into. I mean, we're working well outside village limits, and now we've got a conflict in what their plan is and comprehensive plan, which is set in stone. They can make their own decisions on zoning, and I think it might play in this particular instance.
In my meeting with them, they did not tell me about any comprehensive plan for outside their village. Well, thank you for my time here, and I submit to your schedule.
Any other questions or comments in the committee? This is Mr. Bickford, Mr. Chelmo. One thing I heard now that was pretty new is a fishing pier.
That is true. That was not in the original one. Correct.
You'd have to have permits for that, right?
Yes, and there would have to be permits for the others as well, because we need to stay above the 100-year flood elevation.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I'll open the public hearing and we'll hear from the public. Take my list here. First on the list, we have Patrick Hampson. Are you on, Patrick?
Yes, Sam, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Patrick Hansen. I own property at 11465 North Shore Drive in Grantsford, town of Wood River. I'm speaking today not just as myself, but as the chair of Concerned Citizens of Big Wood Lake and also the chair of Preserve Burnett County. Together, those two organizations represent thousands of residents and property owners in Burnett County. I want to call out the fact that Mr. Chelmo has questioned the credentials of the individuals speaking here today and maybe even of the committee themselves. So I thought I would share my credentials just very briefly. I'm trained as an engineer. I am a Dartmouth College trained engineer, and I also have a master's in public administration from Indiana University, which is the same professional training as the county administrator. So that is the perspective that I bring to these kinds of applications. I've attended most of the Land Use and Information Committee hearings for the last 2 years, and I know you all are well aware of that. So I want to mention that briefly because you are hearing from very qualified individuals of the public who have given this proposal and others like it serious thought and careful consideration. And I object to Mr. Chelmo's characterization of the public's comments as hearsay or somehow unqualified to speak to these matters. I submitted a letter to the committee in opposition to CUP 21-09, and I stand here in opposition to that CUP today. In my letter, I pointed out the fact that Mr. Chelmo's application was woefully inadequate and incomplete, and nothing that he's presented here today addresses those deficiencies. I'm going to call to your attention one very specific detail, and it's a nit to pick, but I'm an engineer, and I look at details. And drawings and details matter. So the county's application for a conditional use permit says, and I quote, the scale, quote, shall not exceed 1 inch to 50 feet, unquote. And that is shall. That means a drawing must meet that specification to be part of the application. Now, Mr. Chelmo's team has all kinds of credentials, and you would think that they could read an application form and understand what the scale of a map must entail. The scale of Mr. Chelmo's so-called detailed map is a scale of 1 inch equals 250 feet. So that is a 5x delta from the stated requirement of the application. And with all the credentials of his various engineers and specialists and surveyors, you would think they could read that instruction and form a proper map and complete a proper application, which they have so far failed to do. So do not expect his team to be able to comply with regulations if they can't comply with the basic requirements of a very simple application. I would ask you to reject this application, not just for that reason, but for many, in terms of its completeness. It is not complete. It is not adequate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Patrick. Next, we have Christina Whitaker. Are you on, Christina?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead.
This is Christina Whitaker. I live at 26927 Riverwoods Trail, so directly across the proposed RV park on the Yellow River. My husband and I are writing to the Board of Supervisors of Burnett County to express our concerns about the conditional use permit application submitted by Mr. Dan Chelmo to install a campground along the Yellow River on land that is directly across the river from our home. We understand that this CUP has been met with a lot of opposition, and rightly so. Our concern is for the expanded RV park proposal that would include a total of 150 sites on both sides of County Road A. As homeowners and taxpayers who have made considerable investment in our community, we have concern for the disturbance that this proposed campground would cause, from noise and light pollution from the campground to less privacy, from congestion on the riverway. We feel that our right to quiet enjoyment of our private property would be in jeopardy, as would the same rights of other adjacent and nearby landowners. Another concern is that we have strain that bringing in hundreds of summer residents would have in our emergency services and roadways, etc. The amount of sales tax collected from a seasonal or overnight campground of this size that comes directly back to the county does not compare to the cost of the need to add additional public safety personnel and expense of adding infrastructure and additional road maintenance. We are also concerned about how a high-density campground in this rural residential and agricultural zoned area would affect the property values of area homes. Data shows that homes near RV parks have a greatly diminished property value, I would say a minimum of a 25% drop. This also affects the ability of a homeowner to sell their property because in the end, nobody is willing to consider concerns over noise, traffic, privacy infringement, safety, security, etc., which makes the homes in that area, in my opinion, unmarketable. The people who built and bought these homes across the river from the proposed campground did so thinking they were buying into a low-density rural residential area and did not sign up to live next door to an RV park. But more importantly is the concern for the overall health of the land, the riverway, the fish and wildlife, and the water quality, both at the site and downstream, including the Yellow Lakes and rivers and our pristine St. Croix River. The zoning for agricultural land, which is where this campground is proposed, limits development to a 10-acre parcel and single-family dwelling per parcel. It's difficult to understand how this proposed high-density commercial operation could trump the current zoning that is in place without a landowner applying to have that land rezoned, working through township and county guidelines, especially when you consider the conditions stated with the land use variance today, which would be no harm to public interest. The variance cannot be.
Thank you. Next, we have Dan Murphy. Are you on, Dan?
Yeah, I'm here, Norm. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Dan Murphy, and I reside full-time in the town of Oakland. Just want to thank the committee for your time and service. I oppose this campground development for all the reasons you'll hear today, but I wanted to just offer my individual and admittedly narrow perspective. I work as an engineer from home in an older house with acreage that I purchased a few years ago, and I'm raising a young family in Burnett County. My wife and I decided to raise our family in this area precisely because it is quiet, peaceful, and safe, although that seems to be changing. The deluge of recent campground proposals and the associated explosion in seasonal and full-time population and associated vehicular and UTV traffic, noise, and issues with already taxed emergency and law enforcement services run contrary to the reasons my family chooses to live here. The income I generate while telecommuting from Burnett County is used to pay property taxes and is spent locally at the hardware stores and lumber yards for home improvement supplies, at local restaurants and grocery stores, and with local contractors. I even hire local babysitters. The money I spend locally to improve my property not only helps the top line for these local businesses, but also increases my property value and thus the tax revenue for the county. As you decide on this and other campground issues, please bear in mind that I'm not the only person telecommuting from Burnett County, bringing regular and sustainable income into the county that does not greatly disrupt my neighbors, detract from their property values, cause harm to the environment, or tax the local infrastructure as these campgrounds do. It is my opinion that campgrounds are what they have now become, which are taxpayer-subsidized high-density residential development, run contrary to this. In the end, it is up to elected county officials like yourselves which version of Burnett County we will see in the future, but I hope it's one where my family can stay for good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Next, we have Anne Marie Lunsman. Are you on, Anne?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Good morning, and I would like to thank the committee for their time. And I am recently relocated from Los Angeles, California. I wanted to tell the committee a little bit about my background, since Mr. Chelmo seems to think that the people here are not qualified to make opinions. I'm opposing this RV site. My address is 7364 East Willow Street, and I do live in the village of Webster. I have a very unique background. I've spent time in a 30-plus year career working as a Los Angeles City Park Ranger, so I'm very familiar with urban environmental issues. From there, I went on to become a police officer both for the city of Whittier PD and then most recently Beverly Hills PD. During my time at Beverly Hills PD, I became an adjunct professor teaching law, and I was also the emergency management officer for the city of Beverly Hills. So emergency mitigation during crisis of populations is something very well known to me. I'm going to echo off of the voices of concern for some of the other speakers that the strain that this RV park will put not only on the village of Webster, the town of Webster, is astronomical. Mr. Chelmo is asking for 90 camping sites. And when you do the math, if you just did an average family of 4 to 5, you're almost reaching the population of our town when it's just residents living here. We're already understaffed, as we know. We have very few law enforcement officers, and we have to reside or resort to mutual aid when we have a crisis that happens, not to mention the commuting distance for officers. I'm not sure what the Burnett County has set up as far as an EOC, meaning in case of an emergency, but if we had a tornado coming through this area, a wildfire, we are now responsible for those RV residents and the care, overloading our hospitals, our policing staff, whatever the situation may be. I also wanted to state that I'm a real estate investor. My holdings are in Los Angeles, but in coming up here and paying attention to property values, because when I bought my property here back in 2005 as a former resident. So my family, too, has been here for many generations. In 2005, I bought with the assumption that the river across from me would never be developed, and if it were, it would be a single-family residence or perhaps farming. And that is one of the reasons why I did purchase this property, not to mention that I appreciated the lack of noise pollution. Mr. Chelmo states that there will be no noise pollution. However, any resident on the river can tell you that.
Thank you, Ann. Next, we have Don Hamilton. Don, you on?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Good morning. I live at 7158 South Devils Lake Drive. I'm opposed to Chelmo Cup 2109. The requested conditional use is a significant departure from the historical and current land use as a farm. A 90-site commercial RV park and campground on a vacant A2 parcel, a shoreline parcel adjacent to Webster's residential border is incompatible and should be disapproved. 2109 is incompatible because it conflicts and is wholly inconsistent with the stated purpose of the parcel's A2 zoning. Per Chapter 30, Article 2, the purpose of A2 is this district is intended to primarily provide for the continuation of general farming and limited residential development. Please consider that a commercial high-density 90-site RV park is the complete and polar opposite of farmland uses and farming activities. 2109 is also incompatible because it is not limited rural residential development. 2109 exceeds the maximum dwelling density for A2 parcels by tenfold. Per Chapter 30, the max dwelling density for A2 parcels is 1 dwelling for 10 acres. As you review 2109, please consider 90 RVs will be developed in the same space where a max of 5 residences would be allowed. This incompatibility is exactly why Webster does not allow campgrounds in the village. Given 2109's location in a shoreland district bordering the Yellow River, adjoining Webster's residential district, please disapprove this CUP based on the negative impacts it will surely cause the land neighbors and the river. Per Chapter 30, there are certain conditional uses that may be appropriate, but not at every location. The unique problems 2109 will create for this vacant A2 parcel cannot be overcome by conditions. 2109's density far exceeds every land use density planning tool or design standard Burnett County has. What condition would convince a reasonable person or resolve an A2 density ratio of 100 RVs versus 1 resident on 10 A2 acres? How can 10 times the permitted dwellings ever be considered consistent or remotely defined as compatible with a limited rural residential development? What berm, privacy fence, buffer, or quiet hour condition makes 90 RVs consistent with a max of 5 homes on the same acreage? What pet policy, wristband rule, noise or light pollution condition would make 90 RVs, 90 vehicles, 90 trailers, 90 accessory sheds, 90 decks and porches with 300 to 500 people compatible with this sensitive shoreland district? If one is looking for the definition of overdevelopment, this is it. Finally, this CUP fails to meet or in any way be consistent or compatible with the primary land use goal of the county's comprehensive plan to preserve our rural and Northwoods character. A land use so dense, so intense, it requires people to be scheduled in 3-hour shifts on the river is neither rural nor Northwoods. In closing, I ask you.
Thank you, Don. Next we have Sue Hamilton. Are you on? Sue Hamilton, are you on? Sue Hamilton.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sue Hamilton, and I live at 7158 South Devils Lake Drive in Webster. And I'd like to explain to you why I'm hoping you will oppose the Chelmo CUP 2109. This 90-site RV campground is being thrust into a small residential neighborhood when it should really be in a commercially zoned parcel of land, not on a parcel which is A2. It's a high-density 90-site RV park and should be classified as a commercial business and in no way is like farmland uses or farming activities. The maximum dwelling density for A2, as established by Chapter 30, Article 2, is 1 dwelling per 10 acres. Mr. Chelmo's CUP is not limited rural residential development. Think about this. He wants to sandwich 90 RV dwellings into the same space 5 residences would be allowed. I'd like to know where the serenity is in that kind of commotion. This incompatibility is exactly why Webster does not allow campgrounds in residential districts as a conditional use. Please consider the fact that CUP 2109 is in a shoreline district. It borders the Yellow River and adjoins Webster's residential district. This land is sole use. Mr. Chelmo is proposing campers take 3-hour shifts to to experience or even use the natural resources. Again, if it's that busy, where is the serenity and quietness in that area? Think about the impact that many users will have to Yellow River, Yellow Lake, and even Devil's Lake. In addition, every type of user group comes with their own sense of entitlement. With so many campers crammed into such a small area, neighbors will undoubtedly bear the brunt of the traffic, commotion, congestion, noise, and campground smoke. This surge of people will have a negative impact to our local services and infrastructure that is not designed to handle a huge increase in demand on our police, fire, rescue, first responders, refuse, recycling, parks, library, and the list could go on and on. Based on the incompatibilities and unique problems this location presents for a high-density, high-intensity development presents, I am asking you to disapprove CUP 2109. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Next, we have Tim Stoffel. Are you on, Tim?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
I own a cabin on South Devil's Lake Drive. I'm opposed to the Land Use Committee granting any approval of CUP 2109. For starters, applicant has failed to file the application in the current proper form that has been readily available. The Land Use Committee staff even informed him he should use the updated form, and it appears as though he continues to ignore the request of the committee and the staff, simply deny it for this reason. Mr. Chelmo requested a CUP in spring of 2019 for a commercial RV park in the same vicinity as well as Devil's Lake. As you probably recall, he was requested to do a number of items. He never did anything the committee requested of him to do, yet here he is again asking the committee to approve another CUP, pretending the prior CUP and requested action items never existed. How can the committee ignore this blatant disregard to the process and requests made and granting him a CUP for this location or even one over by Devil's Lake? Simply denied for not performing the prior agreed upon requests. As noted earlier, he again presents new information at the 11th hour. Strike 3. Denied for this reason again. Under Chapter 30, the committee needs to consider the health, welfare, safety, and economic prosperity of the county and the immediate area surrounding this CUP. This CUP has numerous negative impacts to all these. I'll highlight one: economic prosperity. The town of Meenan, Oakland, and Webster will all be negatively impacted by this high-density commercial operation, if allowed. Based upon a study performed last spring by Solium and Associates, a reputable appraisal firm based out of Spooner, we've identified that substantial evidence that the close proximity to residential lakeshore properties to high-density campgrounds has a negative impact of averaging 14%, anywhere from 4 to 24%. This means that the real estate tax base on many of the properties in and around Yellow River, Devil's Lake, Yellow Lake, and the village of Webster should be reduced. Thus, the tax collections that these towns can't afford to lose would be reduced. Is the county prepared to make this loss up by assessing the proposed campground property higher value? For Mr. Chelmo, the applicant made an unsubstantiated claim that his assessed value will go up 1,000%. Based upon my analysis, his assessed value would, at that rate, would be 3 to 4 times higher than any other existing Burnett County RV park. Additionally, I've spoken to a number of local assessors that work in and around Burnett County, and they agree that one would expect that surrounding property surrounding campgrounds should be reduced. Lastly, there's nothing in Act 67 that states all CUPs applied for need to be approved. Local discretion as to how it does fit into the local comprehensive plan, as well as lack of compatibility with local property owners, needs to be taken into account. Lastly, I ask you to deny this CUP as it's not compatible, and there's not substantial evidence that the applicant has demonstrated or proven that it is compatible. This CUP fails to provide any positive.
Thank you, Jim. Next, we have Roxanne Catapano. Are you on, Roxanne?
I am. This is Rose Catapano. I own a cabin.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Go ahead.
I'm Rose Catapano. I own a cabin on 7154 South Devil's Lake Drive. The term campground has changed. It no longer involves pitching a tent. It is morphed into cramming numerous large RVs into small sites. creating high-density commercial RV parks. There are appropriate sites for these modern RV parks. However, this is not one of them. I would like to address both the safety issues and noise pollution this CUP will have on the surrounding area. Please consider the volume and type of vehicles that would be utilizing the RV park's access road. In the applicant's correspondence with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, he stated that the RV park's traffic pattern estimates are an additional 200 vehicles per day entering and leaving the park. That's an increase to traffic onto Highway 35 by the Yellow River Bridge of 3.6% per day. And if access were to be moved to County Road A, the additional increase is 11.8%. The speed limit on both of those roads is 55 miles an hour. That's a lot of extra vehicle traffic merging onto these roads near an already existing busy intersection of 35 and A. There will be an increase in pedestrian traffic near these two roads that have a speed limit of 55 miles per hour. Neither road has any sidewalks or designated walking paths. The applicant has posted several street signs on Highway 35, County Road A, and South Devil's Lake Drive. All of these signs direct traffic to his lakefront land via one-lane road, creating another safety issue. An RV park with 90 sites will have noise pollution. Right now, in Burnett County, there are noise ordinances that unfortunately are not being enforced. There are numerous citizen complaints about the lack of response and enforcement by the Sheriff's Office of local towns' noise ordinances. At the March 11th Town of Oakland Board meeting, the Sheriff's Office stated they don't have the resources or time to address the current noise complaints. Please deny this CUP due to the safety concerns and increase in noise pollution. This CUP.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Joy Dressel. Are you on, Joy?
Good morning. This is Joy Dressel, and since Mr. Chelmo questions our credibility, I will say I am a fourth-generation family member born and raised in Burnett County, and I have an MBA in finance, and I retired to Burnett County after a career in corporate finance. So I have many questions about the budgetary information Mr. Chelmo provided, but that's not what I want to talk about right now. During the last 12 months, I've attended all of the booth meetings where CUP applications for campgrounds have been included in the hearings. It is disappointing and frustrating to listen to a couple of attorneys that come before the committee and unequivocally state that the committee must approve this CUP application based on their read of Act 67. There's a lot of information regarding Act 67 that is contrary to many of the statements being presented in the Luth meetings by those advocating for approval of campground CUP applications. In my conversations with the offices of Senator Janet Bewley, Senator Rob Stachel, and Representative Nick Milroy, our legislators have confirmed that Act 67 has not taken away your authority to deny CUP applications. There's been some confusion about Act 67 since it was enacted. Some attorneys have advised that local governments have little or no discretion in evaluating CUP applications. That advice overstates the effect of the changes made by the Act. Local units of government still retain meaningful discretion. The retention of that discretion is supported by the legislative history. The bill was modified to retain the continued ability of a zoning board to impose conditions on a particular application in addition to conditions specified by ordinance, and allow for conditions that may not be measurable, and remove limits on the use of public testimony as a basis for denial. In regard to CUP 21-09, There are numerous factors that would dictate that the Luke should deny this CUP application. The proposed high-density campground is in direct conflict with the Burnett County Comprehensive Plan regarding land use and maintaining the Northwoods character and low-density development in rural areas of the county. In addition, the Burnett County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 30, Article 8, Section 30, Basis of Approval, states that the Luke shall consider the effect of such grant on the health, general welfare, safety, and economic prosperity of the county and of the immediate area in which such use would be located. And all of this has been noted in the letters that you have received today and what others are saying. This application does not meet the threshold set for the basis of approval in the Burnett County Code of Ordinances. Please deny this CUP application. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Next, we have Steve Pearson. Are you on, Steve?
I am, Norm. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Good morning to all of you. I'm Steve Pearson. I live in Oakland Township, about 4 miles north of the proposed site as the crow flies. I've been involved in land use planning issues for the past 20-plus years at the township level and with other concerned citizens. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and for your hard work on this committee and service to all of us. I'm probably not telling you anything you don't already know, so I'll be brief. My comments are based on information made available prior to this hearing, as it should have been, not what you've seen or heard this morning. A view from the perimeter of the property in question reveals some potential problems. I'm guessing some of you share these concerns if you've had a chance to look at the site. While a private on-site wastewater treatment system, or POUTS, would be required to manage the high quantity of wastewater that would be generated in a development of this size, unless I'm missing something, nowhere on the site map submitted by the developer do we see where one might be located, nor do we see any indication of how such a system would be engineered. Instead, there are just vague references to septic system areas in a few spots on the map. More detail is required. A large part of the northern and western portion of the site consists of a tamarack bog and a large cattail wetland. These, of course, drain to the river, which calls attention to the question of what happens to stormwater and other runoff, especially when you consider that this type of development will greatly increase the square footage of impervious surfaces on the property. Once again, there is no consideration given to this on the site map. In general, the site map submitted with the application is wholly inadequate, with no distances to property lines shown, no zoning districts of adjacent properties given, no gradients to indicate high and low ground, and no evidence of soil work. Also missing are dimensions, locations, and setbacks of proposed structures. In short, the map fails to give an adequate picture of what is being proposed for the committee to consider. In conclusion, it's my belief that the applicant has not provided sufficient information to allow the committee to make an informed decision on whether or not to grant a conditional use permit for this proposal at this time. This high-density 90-unit RV campground along the north side of the Yellow River raises some red flags. A development like this would put considerable additional pressure on the Yellow River, potentially concentrating hundreds of residents on an A2 parcel and a small section of riverfront, which typically allows just one homestead per 10 acres. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Next, we have LaVon Murphy. Are you on, LaVon?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak with my concerns.
Speak up a little bit.
Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, speak up a little bit so we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about my concerns on this development. There needs to be an awareness by the board of the increased burden of our public services, such as ambulance and sheriff, fire, and first responders. I'm also concerned about the effect of the 90-site RV park campground tapping into the water table, as well as runoff and erosion into the Yellow River. I have concerns regarding the tax revenue needed to keep up infrastructure for the population growth with the 90-site park. I have a suggestion, and my suggestion for this beautiful piece of property would be, since it's unique, a unique wetland area, would be that it be donated and preserved and used as a county environmental education site rather than a 90 RV site campground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lon. Next, we have Steve Walt. You on, Steve?
Yes.
Go ahead.
My name is Steve Voigt. My wife, Diana, and I own a cabin across the Yellow River for Mr. Chelmo's property. Our address is 26943 Riverwoods Trail. We consider ourselves extremely fortunate to be able to live in this beautiful area and believe the activity and noise of a 90-unit campground would adversely affect the value and beauty of our property and that of our neighbors. Diana and I also question how the amazing amount of wildlife found along this area of the Yellow River would be affected by the presence of hundreds of campers. Burnett County offers world-class beauty and outdoor activities. The approval of a 90-unit campground does not seem to be the best way to preserve the outstanding qualities of our county. Because of this, Diana and I respectfully ask that you do not approve Mr. Chelmo's conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Is that all? That is all of the public comments we have. So I'll close the public comment period. And does the committee have any concerns, questions?
Carry on, I'm just inspecting here.
Mr. Pearson.
Again, in regard to the Village of Webster's request to not approve this covenant, and because of their, authority compared to the counties when it comes to zoning in that proximity, I'm inclined to not approve this CUP at this time until there would be some substantial approval from the village before this could take place.
Mr. Conroy.
The one thing I had a question about, based both on our staff recommendations and correspondence I've seen regarding that. I don't believe that there is an approved access to the site at this time. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, I don't believe there is, no.
So DOT has not approved one, and we'll talk about it more, but you're in the staff recommendations, you say that access shall be off Highway 35.
Yeah, and the reason I wrote that is because that's what the application said, was they were going to access State Road 35.
So, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't anything approved by DOT, nor has an alternative from A been approved by County Highway Department.
Correct. Not that I have heard nothing.
So that is a glaring concern to my mind that is unresolved at this point.
Mr. Ross.
We do have a letter from the DOT, I think, saying that there is a driveway on 35 already. But that would have to be expanded. It's not, you're correct, it's not approved, but there is access out of 35.
DOT also went on to say that it would require turn lanes both north and south, and not at the state expense.
Right.
So I mean, that's a significant
It has to be widened also.
A lot of improvements would be required for that level of traffic at that location.
Is that in the conditions? I know it isn't.
Any other comments or questions by the committee?
I don't, there is no response whatsoever from the village of Webster. Okay. I don't, there's a letter. I mean, there's a letter.
There's a letter from the village in the packet.
Page 108.
There's also a letter from the town of Meaning.
I didn't see
anything from
Yeah, there's one from
Meaning came in later, so that's not in the packet. That would have been in an email that you got.
What was their response?
That they don't want it.
Okay.
Opposition.
A copy of this.
Any other questions, comments? I have a couple of them. This is Norm Bickford. One is the access that Mr. Conroy brought up. The other is in Mr. Chelmo's application, he says guests and that would have to register and then park off-site. But I didn't see anything on his map showed where off-site parking was. I don't know if he plans on having them park on Highway 35 or what. The other is there's no mention in there, and I know we've had it on other applications, storm shelter. There's no mention of having a storm shelter within the park area. A couple of his replies, he said there's no access to the river. And then in his application, he's got access to the river. So what is it? Does he have access or doesn't he give access?
He said, Supervisor Anderson, he said no access, but in his rules, he says access to the river with wristband only.
But one letter he says there's no access, and then one he says there is. So
that's
what is it?
That was my question.
Supervisor Conroy, I guess there's other issues for discussion is in the case of the town of Meaning, does not have a specific future land use plan, so it defaults to the current zoning map that serves for the town of Meaning's plan. So in that context, then it is A2 zoning and no provisions for any change or modification to allow more than A2. It's been raised by a lot of folks about the limits and the conflict with the high intensity land use in an A2 district. That is a highly legitimate position to argue. There might be good to speculate a little bit. Why do we even provide a campground opportunity as a CUP in A2? I think the rationale for that I'm going to say, having been at this for well over 30 years, is that back when that provision was inserted in the ordinance, campgrounds were not like campgrounds are today. We're talking mobile camping units and possibly primitive camping, small-scale camping in conjunction with some other use, perhaps. But I don't think that if today we were going to look at what are compatible uses in an A2 district, we would say a mobile home park or a high-intensity, large-scale permanent campground would be compatible with an A2 district. I do think that incompatibility issue is quite strong. And I've been harping on comprehensive plans a little bit today, but that is a part of the whole assessment. The county did in fact adopt the comprehensive plan into Section 30, so entirely in play, I believe, appropriately so.
Any other comments from the committee members?
I have one. Supervisor Anderson, on his rules, he's got quiet hours, but his quiet hours aren't listed.
Well, he does say half hour before sunrise and half hour after sunset, which normally is not time that quiet hours are. Because what time is sunrise? 6 o'clock?
It can be in another. In the summertime now, it changes every day.
Yeah, I think he has to improve on his rules, because he does say in there, decks and outbuilding require campground permit in addition to possibly county permit. Well, they definitely require county permit. Question I have for Jason. Outbuilding sheds, are they taxable?
It should be.
Personal property, isn't it?
Well, as improvements, Supervisor Conway, you mean taxable as improvements?
Yeah.
I would think like sheds or, infrastructure like the septic systems, house, sort of things are assessed. But the park models themselves, which may be valued at approaching, $80,000-$90,000 are not.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, if they build a storage shed, does the assessor put a value on that shed for tax purposes?
I believe what the assessors do is they consider that to be a unit or an item for the camping unit, so they should do it as personal property, but I don't know if they do. Personal property is a very difficult item to contact who the actual owner of the camping unit is and all those different things. So, but that would probably be a better question for how the local assessors are handling it.
I think that's something that has to be clarified for all campgrounds. Because over the past few months, we've had several that have, expanded their campgrounds or whatever, and so there are just about every one of them's got a shed on there. And
Supervisor Conway, if you can look at the assessment for a 40-acre parcel that's been improved to be a campground, you can find out what the tax assessment value is, then you can compare it to a lake home on the lake nearby, and you find you're not much different than one home. So, and that's everything,
I've found, when we've dealt with assessments on municipal level, that portable sheds generally aren't taxed. I mean, if they're like an 8x10 shed that's on skids, it isn't normally taxable, frankly.
But they have to have permits.
They have to have a permit just to place it, so they're within it's a zoning permit rather than a building permit. And so they put it, in the right position on the lot, so they're not encroaching on the other properties.
Is that for the village or is it?
Well, it would be, if it's for the village, it'd be for, assumably for everybody. I mean, it would be a state deal.
Mr. Roth.
I see Supervisor Conroy's statement about the zoning as a valid reason to perhaps deny this. I'm also wondering about, we've got a couple of other things. Supervisor Bickford and others have talked about the discrepancies that have come up between today and the other stuff. Plus, we have I don't know if that's a valid reason to deny. And we've got opposition from both the village and the town, and I don't know if that's if opposition is a valid reason to deny anymore. Those are three things that I see.
Supervisor Conway, I see in incompatibility, I could see conflict with the comprehensive plan, and I could see safety and public health and welfare issues over both access and overall intensity of use and characteristic change. Those things I would say are at issue here. And those I think are three things. And in some respects, I did a little pursuit of Billy Dressel's reference from the Legislative Council, and didn't find a whole lot, but basically the Leg Council is saying that Act 67 does not preempt some of the things that we thought it did, and that a weight of opposition has some merit. So if you read that same email, probably did. I'd like to find the foundation for that, and I haven't yet, but I've put questions out to see if we could resolve it. But I think that there's a lot of issues here today. And the only question in my mind is if we would make a motion to deny or if we would kick the can down the road again. That would be the two options we have, I think.
Why would we kick the can? It's Supervisor Roth. Why would we kick the can down the road again?
That's my question too. I guess that would be the only alternative. I don't know that I'd be in favor of that. We could postpone it to try to get more information, but I don't know that it would change the scenario in reality.
Supervisor Pearson, what we found in the past, if we denied, they still got the right to come back anyway. So I mean, so a final decision today only is a decision of the day.
Very true.
No. I guess I would make a motion to deny if you want to restate your reasons, if that's enough.
Okay, I will second your motion, and I will restate that I feel that there is a conflict with the comprehensive plan in the aspect of appropriate use in an A2 district. I think there is incompatibility with this use within the A2 district, within the context of the Section 30 language about that not all conditional use permits are appropriate on all sites. I believe there is, I would add that there is
safety,
public health, welfare, and safety issues involving the intensity of the use and access issues on both Highway 35 and County Road A could be in play. That would be significant. And that I think also the character of the district and the intensity of the use, I think, are in conflict with the wishes of the town of Neiman and the village of Webster.
Motion?
He made the motion, I seconded it with that.
He was clarifying the clarification.
Want to restate that now?
Did you get all that, Connie?
Yeah, I got pretty good of it.
Mr. Chairman,
So I have,
Robert.
before we proceed any further, were you planning on letting Mr. Chelmo address any issues or whatever? I don't know if that was something that, it seems to me he asked for that, and I don't know if that was granted to him or not, but I'm just wondering.
That's right. Based on the actual content of the motion, I think what's being said is that the application for a campground, the campground is part of the issue. So I don't know how unless he came back and said, okay, I want to subdivide it into residential or something, how he would be able to respond.
Right. Supervisor Conroy, I see no problem with some subdivision into residential. I think this could be an ideal spot for a conservation type subdivision, commonly held riverfront and backland, and then a little bit more, couple more lots than we would otherwise see, perhaps, based on our rules on that. I'm not going to go into that detail. I don't think this is an undevelopable site. I think it's undevelopable for the high intensity use that's being proposed.
It's Supervisor again. I think Supervisor Blomberg's proposal was to have Mr. Chelmo respond before we vote. And I guess I'm saying I don't know that it's not. It's up to you.
Can you do that once the motion's made and seconded?
So if we close the public hearing, I guess that's I have no issue with him responding, but I don't know that it would change my mind.
Well, if we're going to let him respond, it should be responded before we make the motion.
Yes. Okay. Public comments.
Well, this is public comment.
Yeah.
I make a motion, we call the question.
Got a motion. Tanya, please repeat it.
The motion?
Yes.
All right. So I'll do my best to correct me, Craig, if I miss something or don't understand something completely. So motion to deny the conditional use permit, made by Supervisor Ott, Supervisor Conroy. Did you guys add? Oh, never mind. Okay, so conflict with the comprehensive plan within the A2 district and compatibility within the A2 district, public health and safety issues because of public access, the character and density, and the responses from the town of Union and Village of Webster.
All right. Okay. We have a motion and a second to deny. Roll call vote. Mr. Pearson?
Yes would be.
Yes would be to deny.
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Robb?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford? Yes. The CUP 21-09 Chelmo has been denied. Thank you all. And we'll go on. Number 7 on the amended agenda, discuss Chapter 30 changes related to items from the Large-Scale Livestock Study Ad Hoc Committee. Mr. Conway.
You had me searching for where I was in the program. The situation we have now is Jason and I have sat down and hunkered down and worked on some stuff, but we don't have it quite done yet. The Natural Resources Committee ordinance, section 17, or 18, I mean, sorry. We should have the draft of that citing law ready. I haven't checked my packet for Thursday yet because I've been too busy reading stuff for today. But the reality is I think we're going to bring a draft to the Natural Resources Committee. Once we do that, we'll share that with this committee as well. And that will be the portion of it that is under the jurisdiction of the Natural Resources Committee. And we have to integrate the zoning components back and forth in those two ordinances. And that's what we get to do. Doesn't look like much, but we made some progress. And I arm twisted enough in that scenario for that ordinance to insert some language similar to the current emergency rule DNR is putting out for nitrogen standards on liquid manure and processed wastewater spreading and commercial fertilizer. All of those things are going to be targeted on highly vulnerable soils in the state of Wisconsin, and the rule is proceeding. Burnett County, as I said a lot of times, is the poster child for a county with highly vulnerable soils. They're either highly permeable or high runoff. But our soils would be targeted. But just in case that doesn't get bogged down, I'm advocating we should accept the sound science that the Department of Natural Resources did to necessitate going forward with that rule and adopt it for our very own. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
When are they supposed to print it there?
Well, the rule is the economic impact analysis was out for comment, and then it's proceeding like emergency rules do. The Natural Resources Board approved proceeding with that back last winter. And what it does is would limit winter spreading from basically September on until they're trying to target during the growing season for liquid manure and so it would involve making sure that the growing season take-up of the nutrients occurs. If you lose nitrogen, a little less so with phosphorus, but you lose nitrogen if you put it on the site and it penetrates below the root zone, it does not get taken up. It winds up transporting into groundwater or surface water. That this is the point of that rule. And some places in Burnett County soils are favorable for that, but most of Burnett County don't. We're highly permeable, 20 feet to the water table, about 80% of the county. It's not a good place to put a lot of high volume spreading in winter or off growing season time. So that's not going to be in the zoning ordinance other than a reference to it.
We could just reference it, we wouldn't have to adopt it then.
It won't be done in land use, no. It'll be in the citing ordinance, but we're going to have to integrate the land use ordinance and the citing ordinance more than it currently is. But that's what we've been kind of watching that rule to see how it's going. So, and that, I might add, came along after we were done with LSLS, although we did talk about limiting winter spreading. It was part of our recommendation, but not with the strength of a state level rule backing it up. So that's about all the report for that section.
Any questions or comments, Craig? Okay, next we'll move on, number 8. Next steps and discuss updates related to campgrounds, chapter 30 and 45. And I was not at the last county board meeting when they adopted the moratorium, but Mr. Chairman Taylor said that if it was going to be a subcommittee, it would be a subcommittee of the land use committee. So it'd be members of the land use committee. So, and I guess I can appoint or whatever, but I've asked Mr. Ah, Mr. Conroy, and Mr. Pierce or Mr. Patton if they would be interested in serving on a subcommittee, and they said they would. So I don't know how you've been on the subcommittee, so you have meetings in that, right?
Right. We will take your appointment, I think, without objection. Everybody else step back. Right? But what I would expect we would do then is we'll schedule a meeting and organize our committee, and then we will proceed to meet to discuss the issues and discuss the issues with the interested parties, come up with some recommendations that will be the subcommittee's goal to do. I did, as part of my researching, contact the Center for Land Use Education, and they'll participate with us in this, with our subcommittee, act a little bit as moderators and resources for otherwise what's going on statewide, and what they're highly interested in this issue. And so I think we'll try to work with them. It'll probably be by Zoom, but
my question would be, it's really a subcommittee of the committee, and it hasn't been approved by the board, so do we have to notice it, and do we have to minute it?
I would assume so. Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
I would say just like we did with the large-scale livestock committee, but that was a multi-jurisdictional thing.
Yeah.
So citizens.
That was approved by the board.
And that's how it was approved by the county board. Yeah.
They didn't have these public hearings, but
They were public meetings, but not hearings.
Yeah.
And they had no authority to adopt anything, just to make recommendations, which is what we will be doing too. What it does is it provides us the ability to meet and discuss in a non-public hearing scenario, so that we can discuss what we all think about what we need to do, with the interested parties.
Then after that, then it would come into a public hearing.
They'll come back to this committee, it's what we conclude of the things you need to look at. Jason will be involved, of course, working with developing potential amendments to address those things. And that they didn't drag you into it too deep right now, because you're plenty busy enough already, I would think, right?
Yeah, this is, obviously the worst time to be doing ordinance amendments, but we'll get it done.
Right, you know, but I mean, but just with the building season about to kick off, you're still down a person.
So down a person,
I mean,
permits are up way higher than they were last January and February, so, yeah.
I can understand, you know, like, we can try to get, I don't think this is gonna be terribly hard, because the issues are pretty much we're all aware of them from all of these public hearings. And I think the three of us should be able to have time to meet at need, you know, we'll go from there, we'll set something up. But I'm hoping that we can, you know, look at the issues, try to see, okay, how should we address these? Get some consensus with the people that are affected and bring it back in a fairly short window.
Just like to have a large debate.
Yeah, it would be the agenda and stuff would go out.
But
People would watch. I don't think at the LSLS meeting there was public comment, right?
Well, we had a little bit of public participation, but what we would be doing, if we're gonna do a meeting and say, we have some of the people that we've been talking to, you know, who have concerns about campground regulations, that form a kind of a subcommittee of your own that can meet with us appropriately and bring your issues and we'll talk them over, you know, or we can do it remotely, whatever we decide we're going to do. But we are dialing back on the lockdown, so to speak. So within a social distancing scenario, I think we could do that, but we'll have to see. So again, I think we have to reserve the right to not create a issue with a packed room if we can manage it.
I think that's really will be up to the subcommittee to decide how they want to operate them.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the first thing we'll do is schedule an organizational meeting, and then we'll go set some dates and figure something out.
Sounds good.
This subcommittee just going to be the people from this committee, no outside general public, like.
Chairman Taylor said it would be.
Not as members of the committee, no. Okay, it's certainly going to be dealing with
Somebody from the tourism or the business or economic development.
It's not them to provide input, yes, absolutely. But we're not going to have voting members outside of the land use committee members. I think that was the wishes of the committee before.
Okay. Thank you, 3. Number 9, discuss future meeting locations and format.
So everybody's gonna look at Wanda. So how do we want to do this? Obviously today we already had someone show up this morning that thought they could attend in person. So now that the government center is no longer closed, how do we want to handle this? But if we have meetings where we expect a large crowd, you know, we still have to try to maintain social distancing, and I don't know how you do that in this building when if you have more than, you know, 5 or 10 people show up. So do we want to move them potentially out to the highway shop, or I believe they were also researching another facility in the village of Siren that possibly could hold meetings, so where we could do more in person.
Well, this is Supervisor Ogg. Can we just, if it looks as though we're going to have significant input, can we just make it if you have comments, to make it virtual? Yeah, virtual.
Well, the problem is we put the public hearing notice out 3+ weeks ahead of the meeting, and sometimes I don't have a good estimation if it'll be controversial or not, because we try to put in the public hearing notice that, you know, you have to call in and register, and it's going to be virtual and all that. So I don't know how we would notify people partway through.
Could we
notice?
Just make it as a standard that they will be calling, and then when you send a notice out to the petitioner, that you could tell them they can show up if they want? So the notice would say it's virtual, but then note to the petitioner, the one you send out saying that there's going to be a meeting, it would say you can either call in or you can show up personally.
So are we gonna pick who can show up in person and who can't though?
The petitioner, it would be the petitioner, the person who paid the fee.
Applicant.
The applicant.
Supervisor Connery, I kind of lean with Jason here that either everybody should be able to come or nobody should be able to come. You know what I mean, from the public access point of view. Only because I can see that, you may remember when we first started doing the virtual meetings and that some attorneys raised the point that that might be vulnerable to the open meeting violation because it's not everybody can come. But as it worked out, we did really well with this, and no one really complained and we haven't been challenged. But if we start selecting, you can be here, but you who are opposing cannot, or you who are opposing can be here, but the applicant is virtual, I think it's an uneven playing field perhaps, and we could get challenged as an inappropriate way to run the meeting. I don't know that. I'm just, with my paranoid streak sneaking in, I see that as a potential issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I'd be nervous about picking who can be here and who can't.
I think Mr. Grindell made it very clear. It's the first one. We're not going to pick it. If the public cannot appear, neither can the applicant.
I'd be inclined to say let's go a couple, 3 more months and see how things are shaping up with, pandemic-based concerns reducing. If enough of us get vaccinated and the incidence rate of infection goes down, we could probably be safe and open back up. But I don't know if we're quite there yet.
Well, under this moratorium, we're not going to have much in the way of conflict anyway, so I would agree with you. Let's just keep it this way until July 1st and then decide.
You have one coming in April.
For campground.
For Chelmo's other campground, if Oakland says we can. That's why we postponed it, was because Oakland wanted us to hold on.
Well, I just referred to Craig. Let's just say like the 1st of July, we'll review it, leave it the way it is till then. That way we can just be.
Supervisor Anderson, I tend to agree it's either everybody in or nobody in. And the only thing is, if all of a sudden we start getting lines of people at the door saying it's a public meeting and it's a public thing, then maybe we'll have to look at it a little different. But until we get an uproar about it, this works so good.
So we'll just plan on virtual May, June, and July. And then in July, we'll have it as another agenda item to then look at if we want to do something different for August.
Right.
By that time, we'll have the other ordinances taken care of and see what happens to applications.
I sure hope so.
We don't.
We'll be working on it every year.
We also agree to that.
Okay.
We're going to hold it virtually then, unless we get corporate counsel or somebody else tells us we can't. Okay, moving on. Number 10, Land Services, Zoning and Property Information Division reports.
So those items are in your packet.
We're still getting assistance from Bryan County.
Still getting assistance from Bryan County. I still have a whole stack of sheets on my desk to review. I did get some of them done last month. Staff reports are in there. You can see, everything is up that deals with land and or building. Recordings are up. address requests are up, permits are up. So revenue-wise, we have already hit 25% of our budget revenue, and not even really into what would typically be a busy season yet. At this point, weight limits are still on and everything else, so pretty crazy the amount of work we got coming in already. Website statistics are in there again. This time I did it by city. See where people are hitting our website from. Zoning reports are in there. See year-to-date permits, all the different ones in there. And staff reports in there as well. The other position, we got some applicants. I haven't had a chance to review them yet. But hopefully we'll get some interviews scheduled, I would hope within the next 2 weeks or so.
Oh, yeah, that should be good.
There was 5 when I talked to Stacy Tuesday or Wednesday. So, yes.
Yeah, and the first hire is getting closer up to speed.
Yep, she passed her post inspector exam. She's studying for her soil test right now. She seems to be picking up pretty quick and pretty smart about everything, so.
And that's just as a comment, Supervisor Conrad, that's a tough positions because there aren't very many of them qualified people in the whole state, and it's.
I mean, there's no private sector job that has those type of, I mean, soil testing does, obviously, but the inspector, post inspector, there isn't. That's only a government function, so.
Right. And it's a kind of a unique discipline. You have to know a little bit about everything to do that.
I have a question not related. We had this one Erickson that we didn't talk about. You listed some concerns. Do we follow up with the concerns, whether we talk about it or not?
Yeah, but he's going to come back, I think, next month.
I mean, regardless, I mean, if there's concerns, we always have to state they got to do this. I mean, if there's a violation, there's a violation.
Once we find out about it, we have to deal with it. Yep.
Well, Jay Smith on that, could some of that have happened before Lincoln adopted zoning, or is that?
No, that's all since they adopted zoning in 2007, I believe.
Remember, I was working with them.
Yep.
And our little flurry of everybody adopting, Jackson, Lincoln.
Daniels.
Him and I kind of divided them up. I just, it's hard. Sometimes something that's not real long ago, you find some things that happened before the rules change, as it were, so you don't get to sort that out.
Oh, and speaking of zoning, I guess the town of Blaine has it on for their annual meeting, whether to adopt county zoning or not.
Really?
So I don't know if they will. I went up to their meeting in February and answered questions that they had about zoning, but I don't know. Find out after that, I guess.
Could. There'd be a lot more mileage up to their.
Yes. Well, luckily there's not a whole lot of people up there, so you don't get a whole lot of permits either way. But
You have a whole lot of roads to get lost on.
yes, there is.
Yes. I mean, it's the ultimate inspector trip is when you go like from the north end of McGraw Lake, and then you've got to go back down to Roosevelt to inspect something. You almost can't get there.
Yep.
Are we supposed to be hearing something from the town of Oakland on the CUP or not?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to, we'll hold the Chelmo Devil's Lake one next month, whether or not, I mean, the town can always say, make a recommendation to do something with it, but I can't hold it up.
Okay.
Without doing it.
Okay. Good enough. That may be a lot of people.
That was a big meeting the last time.
115.
Yeah.
Well, jurisdictionally, it falls, under the same concerns of this one. the village of Webster would have say in this one too. And,
Yeah, they never weighed in on that last time.
I mean, I think they should be made aware if it's a concern that they've got rights.
Okay, any future agenda items?
You may want to add, just as a placeholder, subcommittee report to the committee each month.
Okay, yeah. Anything else, any other agenda items? Did everyone vote? Yeah. Yep. I forgot about it until I went by Union Town Hall and turned around and went back and voted. If not, motion to adjourn.
Motion, we adjourn this.
Mr. Patton.
Second.
Second by Mr. Pearson, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You want me?